You're watching Fugitive Red-Eye, and welcome to another episode of OverAnalyzing, the series where I look more in-depth at the fictional universes which I love. Today we're doing part 2 of the Red Dwarf novel series. With part 1, we just talked about a general introduction to the novels. Here in part 2, we're going to be specifically talking about Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers, which is the first Red Dwarf novel. So Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers starts out with Lister on the moon Mimas. He got there by unknown circumstances on a drunken night out celebrating his 25th birthday. Unable to get back to Earth because he somehow spent all of his money on that same drunken night in question, he resorts to stealing a hopper taxi, which is a type of taxi that just kind of jumps around like a mech sort of from place to place to deliver people, and illegally taking fare so that he can try and save up enough money to get back to Earth. Incidentally, the only customer we actually see him pick up is someone who's very oddly familiar. It's a man in an officer's uniform wearing a false mustache. Originally, this person has Lister take him to a quote-unquote restaurant in the red light district. However, Lister clearly sees this person run into a whorehouse. He agrees to wait around for the customer in question, because he really didn't want to have to find another fare that night, so he was willing to take more money from him. But once that customer takes too long, he goes into this android whorehouse and pulls him out of there. This customer later on bribes Lister so that he won't say anything about it. When he bribes Lister, however, we get a quick glimpse of his wallet, which happens to have the name Arnold J. Rimmer, BSc, SSc, monogrammed into it. Rimmer, of course, tells Lister that his name is Christopher Todhunter, but then, of course, seeing that, Lister says, "See you later, Rimmer." Later on, it cuts to a little bit further ahead. It has some more stuff describing holograms and things, but we're going to stick mainly to the relevant plot. In fact, most of the hologram stuff actually got cut out of the abridged version, but it does go in depth on George McIntyre's death, so if you were curious about that, it is in the book. Lister decides to join a Space Corps ship to try and smuggle himself back to Earth. He plans to hop on an Earthbound vessel and sneak off once they get on Earth and go AWOL. As you probably guessed, that ship is Red Dwarf. The problem is before going to Earth, they have to go to one of the moons of Pluto, Triton, in order to mine some ore to take back to Earth. So it's like a 4 or 5 year journey, something like that. So Lister kind of got roped into being stuck aboard Red Dwarf as a vending machine repairman, as we've seen him in the show. Of course, we know about the whole radiation leak and the cat, so I really don't have to go too in-depth on that. But suffice to say, there are some differences when he wakes up. For instance, in the book, when he first wakes up, Rimmer is not revived yet. It's just him and Holly. Lister is basically a wreck and starts falling apart, at which point Holly decides to revive someone in order to keep Lister sane. He revives Rimmer because he's the only one he could think of at the time, and then he lies to Lister and tells him that he's the one he was the closest to, because Holly honestly couldn't remember anything about anyone. He just remembered Rimmer. He's senile, as the show has shown. So the whole thing about how many words he's had with Rimmer, yeah, that was all a lie. On top of that, they don't initially find the cat just walking in the hallway. Instead, Holly says he's detected an unidentified life form in the cargo decks. At which point they go down, bazookoids drawn, and find a cat city. Of course, the cat teams up with them, and to make a long story short, they end up, the crew like they already were, like they are in the show. Later on down the road, they come across a distress signal from a ship called the Nova 5. It gives us a chapter from Crichton's point of view, explaining that Crichton himself basically caused the ship to crash by washing all of the components of the computers that piloted the ship. Of course, this was later canonized in Series 7 with the line, "You killed the crew, Crichton. Okay, it was an accident, but etc." After they rescue Crichton, a few other things happen, but the book ends with them mysteriously returning to Earth, only to find out that they've been trapped in Better Than Life. So they try to escape, but then the book ends with them deciding to stay in the game because Lister couldn't leave his kids on Christmas, and it's always Christmas in the town of Bedford Falls, which is where Lister ended up in Better Than Life. So the book ends on a cliffhanger with them stuck in Better Than Life, which leads us on to the second novel, Better Than Life. We'll get to that next time.